When I was first approached in regards to what Producers Club had to offer, I came Q4 of 2018, and I saw just one too many death by PowerPoint presentations from vendors, and I thought, where's the inspiration? Where can we push things, especially under like the sales and marketing focus? Those of you who've seen my demonstrations know that I tend to teach by showing rather than telling, right? Nobody wants to see another one of those slides, and that applies just as much to you guys as my partners as your guys' own clients. And so I took a step back after doing the presentation at boot camp. It was 220 seats inside the room. We put 250 before we hit the fire marshal limit, and they kicked people away. And then there was no video. It never made it up to the actual portal for Robin Robbins. And I thought, after about the 10th email in a row of people saying, Kyle, can you please come to my MSP and help me sell this to my partners? I thought, all right, everybody loves those Kevin Mitnick-style demonstrations where you get to see the live hacking, but I think there's a kind of a misconception that we all can't do it. And the reality is, I do these things and it looks sexy, and obviously from my background, it seems like, oh, hey, there's a lot to it, and oh, I haven't spent my time at NSA. But the reality is, I teach every year several of these classes on how for folks to give these live hacking demos. So what I'm gonna do, this is part one of our demonstration, and it's all about how I have used over 3.5 years, my technical prowess is about exposing hacks. And how do I use that to enable our sales, both for ourselves and our partners to help grow? And the idea behind this is by Q4, I want to present Robin Robbins and the whole group here at Producers Club with both the VMs, the instructions, something that you can give to your technicians back at home to be able to deliver these like kick-ass demonstrations yourself. So I'm going to go through today, just in case anybody hasn't seen it. There's only 25 minutes, and I don't know if anybody saw the 45-minute version. It's tons of fun, but I've got even less time. So I want to walk you through a demonstration I just recently did. In case folks have not actually seen anything or don't know who I am, maybe I'll establish some credibility here real quick. I am the CEO of Huntress Labs, and before this, I spent 11 years at NSA doing offensive cyber operations. So I won I actually won the top performer award at NSA, and my co-founders and I won the World Series of Hacking. So we do that really darn well. Offensive security runs in our veins, hence the reason we're trying to teach you guys about this, of how to give these presentations. And everybody always asks, Kyle, like, if you were hacking stuff for a living, gather intelligence, supporting counterterrorism efforts, like, why in the world would you leave Huntress Labs, or excuse me, leave the NSA to start Huntress Labs? And it was just one too many of these, breaches du jour that showed up in the news that I thought, like, every single one of these companies knew they were using everything they were recommended. They all had antivirus, they all had firewalls, they thought they were doing the best they could. Could I find some breaches that slipped by is kind of what the inspiration for my co-founders and I. But what also bothered me is I had to present this to investors, and this is an actual slide from my investment deck back when I raised some investment last year. And we had about 5,800 clients, right? A lot of them coming through MSPs. We have over 400 MSPs that use our product. But I had to pitch them something that was exciting, right? And I had to be able to convince them this is something worth actually doing. And what I realized that part of our success to grow so quick in 3.5 years is we do sales different, and we do marketing very different. I don't want another cold call. I don't want another, hey, death by PowerPoint webinar that drives me insane. If you think about the last presentation that just happened, it was all the recipe on how to make your webinar successful. But one of the pieces is what content do you put in there? So this is all going to be about my demonstration. This was one I did yesterday, keynoted for one of our MSP partners that has 90 employees, 18 million in ARR, and I got permission to give the same keynote, shortened version here for Robin Robbins. And the goal for this is Q2 and Q3 are going to continue to build. Me giving you the tools, showing how to use this, how to actually close sales deals by educating on security. So obviously I would educate that same MSP. I had to show a whole audience full of this MSP's clients and tell them obviously the same thing. If these breaches happen, they slip by, and that was exciting. I even called out, sometimes it's the actual MSP that gets compromised, only for the MSP to be a catalyst for an attacker to go to those customers. And that puts them on, the heels a little bit of like, I never really thought about that part of my supply chain. Nowadays, since that education is becoming more and more common with small businesses, they're gonna start asking you guys that question of, how do you even protect yourselves? So when they get into you, they don't actually get into me as well. And I see stuff like this every day, right? Attackers had access to victims for 100 days. That's mundane. Nobody wants to see this slide. It is true. A better way to tell this story is when you educate them. Like, for instance, attackers get in minutes of seconds, but you probably didn't know that they don't land on the computer to actually steal all the data quickly. The reality is what they do is they move through your network, elevate privileges, find that share, maybe finally find the data that's never just wrapped up in a bow on the computer. and actually steal that data, exfiltrate it. And then you walk them through the attacker perspective. So every single time I give a presentation like this, I say, as an NSA operator, which you aren't, but you are their cybersecurity expertise. And you could say to them, as your cybersecurity liaison, we pay just as much attention to offensive security as we do defense. And what we know is attackers, as soon as they get into your network, they've already pre-planned of what type of security might be used by our MSP. So we take a proactive approach. So instead of going undetected for hours, days, weeks, et cetera, we want to be able to find this at compromise and help before, contain it before the proverbial it hits the fan. Because if not, for that customer, they're going to get salty. They're going to find out about this. Law enforcement is going to approach them, and obviously the expensive containment costs that none of us want. So I educate them on the initial access. I tell them, hackers have to get in with an email. And for a lot of them, they've never heard this in non-technical terms. They've never had somebody show them what actually happens. So imagine as an attacker having to send the same phishing email every day. I would be the most inefficient hacker in the world. Accountants know about efficiencies. Doctors, lawyers, whoever your client is, even in construction, they know about efficiencies. And they can think to themselves, oh, if I was a hacker, why don't I just put something on that computer each day that allows them to have a foothold? So instead of every single day having to regain access, that hacker is more effectively competent. They're able to minimize their time to do damage. And this whole theme, if you take a look at this trade show, or this show was called Carpe Diem, right? Seize the day. They probably never even thought that hackers are just as excited to seize the day as we are to seize the day in accounting, right? So that's just a little bit different approach about that. And we educate them that hackers get into your networks. They're going to try to get access on boot up. And this is something specific to me, right? This is because Huntress looks at this problem, which is called persistence. My job as an NSA operator wasn't to get into a terrorist cell and smash and grab data. I was there for months, weeks, years on end to be able to keep track of no matter what they did. And they do this to your client as well. They're not there just to steal data once or install ransom once, almost always, right? I have hundreds of thousands of computers I get to monitor and protect at Huntress. Very rarely do we see somebody that's not actually just going after this. So what I'm going to do is through this education, I'm going to pivot over to the live hacking demo and share with you on the same type of pitch you can help show your customers rather than tell them. So when they ask the questions of what is an attacker doing to get these footholds? You can say, you probably never even heard of a foothold because they haven't. Same way you've probably never heard of half the medical stuff or accounting stuff that they're talking about. But you can educate them and say, look, these attackers are so savvy that sometimes they actually only run the malware when a process executes. Could you imagine when the same software like Dropbox is exfiltrating data to the cloud? As an attacker, I actually take a look at that and say, oh my gosh, this is a perfect way that when your legitimate software is exfiltrating data, why don't I exfiltrate your legitimate data but to my shady Dropbox account? That's something that puts them out on edge. They're like, I had never thought that people could abuse my own legitimate software against me, and that's your opportunity to educate. So I get personal with these demos. I always make every single one, and I know the font's going to be small in the back, but that's besides the point here. This is a part of their list, and they had all kinds of companies like law firms. I tend not to want to use a law firm as my example. They've actually got the motives to be able to maybe get a little bit salty. But I noticed that the American Board of Anesthesiology was at yesterday's presentation, and their website's great. Absolutely great, shows all the people that I would want to go after. And on top of it, I noticed the only person hiding themselves was the information security infrastructure manager. So George Best, he really is Mr. Best. What's funny about that is I started asking the question of how would I get in? How would I get into ABA? And that's the same thing you would want to ask your clients of how would an attacker get into your network? Most people are like, I'm not even special enough, but I can promise you, I have the data across hundreds of thousands of computers. It's not about being special, it's just about opportunity. So I tend to see attackers abusing legitimate software. O365, we probably all in here use it or use some flavor of something like this. So I tend to think all right, a job advertisement for the ABA that had a great careers page on Indeed, which made it convenient to apply for a resume or apply for this job. And so I thought to myself, okay, let's go to APA's career page. And if you take a look, for those that are in the back, it looked like this. Please submit all inquiries in your applications of human resources. How convenient. And in this demonstration, I actually tailored it. It had the email address. Jennifer Hopp here would get an email called employment opportunities. And Jennifer Hopp was a sweet lady. Her picture was on there. So this whole exact demo is going to actually walk us through of how you can show the security to be able to make this. And it didn't just affect ABA. Every single person in this several hundred person audience was glued to this demonstration at, this could be me. So I would fill out something like, I'm a friendly person at trustworthy.com, and of course my email with my attachment would be something like, hey, ABA team, I'm really working hard. This is my opportunity to get in as a support specialist. Please help me. And that's where the fun begins here. So I'm going to bring up, let's make sure we've got all the AV issues ironed out and we don't lose any screens here. So let's go full screen. All right, so this looks ominous, right, and scary. This is the attacker screen, right? So if you're putting on and convincing your audience to think about this, this is the picture that you paint yourself out as, I'm Kyle in my Ukrainian basement in my underwear, right? And unfortunately, Jen is over here, and this is her Windows 10 computer, and she's getting emails through Office or Outlook, and this is that email, right? Hey, friendly person, please accept my application. And that's exactly how you want to do it. So in the next versions of this, as I'm providing support on how to do these demonstrations, I'm just going to follow a checklist. This is your guys' peek behind the curtains. You're also going to get a watch. But notice that I'm just doing a whole lot of copy and paste. These are templated emails with templated payloads, static IPs that I'm running all from a VM here. No computers getting harmed. Yet us as an audience, we're all glued to this because it's exciting. So this is where you paint the story of like Jen would open up her preview. And since she's in the ABA, HIPAA compliant and things like that, she's used to dealing with encrypted documents. And as an attacker, they're all savvy enough to say, hey, my document's protected. And it even gives them instructions. Oh, if you open this in Office, you need to look at the offline preview. Okay, I better open this document. And then as soon as I go to it, I go to step 3 in their checklist. So let's zoom in a little bit for everybody in the back to see. If this document was downloaded from email, please enable editing. How friendly. And so the users are like, okay, we've all had know before training. Kevin Mitnick, helps know before educate. But it's always nice when you can actually say, hey, here's the example to actually show. So the last step here is enable content. And what I've done is I've already pre-set up this virtual machine that has a payload ready to go. And you're going to notice these are free hacker tools, nothing special. This isn't Kyle's NSA sauce. These are just free tools that are available on the internet. And so if we go back to our VM here, I'm going to enable that content. And as an attacker, for those that are in the nosebleeds, it says, what is this? Incorrect word version, unable to decrypt. Ooh, I better send it to one of my other folks in HR, right, to open this for me because they might have the version. And we know where this goes. So I'm going to close it out. That was actually made that way to do it that way. And maybe that's the last thing they ever do. They never open it back up, right? Maybe they start browsing the web, whatever they're doing. But we see over here, my VM was already pre-set up to receive this. But most of us don't ever think about, can we show them what we can do? Now watch this. This is a whole lot of copy and paste. But from my commands that I'm going to type in, it's a command line version, so you might want your slightly more technical IT person to be able to run this for you. But I'm going to say, okay, I want to interact with that newly infected computer, and I've done this 7 times on this particular computer. And as I demonstrate to them, usually I want to show the visuals. That's a great part of your sales strategy is to educate through the visuals. And there's nothing better than starting out with a good old-fashioned screenshot from Kyle in his basement in his underwear, right? When you see this and the rest of the audience sees QuickBooks, which is crystal clear, this is what the screenshot looks. It's not really much different than your Screen Connect software. It's just malware doing it instead of like a friendly sysadmin tool. You've got an audience that's now captivated, and they're like, oh gosh, they just opened an email. They weren't even an administrator. Now Kyle's in his underwear taking screenshots. And so you continue, right? As a salesman, it's all about your great story, how you actually paint this picture. And so notice this is more copy and paste. Every demo I do, I don't even learn these commands. I just copy and paste. And so part of my goal here is the next couple of these seminars to give you these type of copy and paste recipes so we can have good laughs. Like you can imagine ABA, my example was all about how do I get into your HIPAA data? How do I get the stuff that's related? But maybe they're not in HIPAA. Maybe they're in some other FISRA finance regulated, or maybe it's something like DoD contractor that has NIST 800. I try to make sure all my examples are related to them so they can think about this hacker is doing directory lists and seeing all the files just from opening an email. And that's everything Jen had access to. That's her shared drives. That's the emails. How am I doing? I'm 10 minutes. But when you got a little bit extra time like this, you can also make your audience like, I actually went out with a handful of MSP partners last night, and no offense, like the first thing I pulled off their phones when they were sharing emails with me was things like, one of us got a little sauced last night, right? And I don't want to share which one of the person is in the room, but it's a great way to be able, everybody's digging it, they're laughing, they're understanding those security that it's not just your sensitive data that's going to get you in compliance trouble. It's also the stuff that you don't want taken off your phone, off your stuff. And keep in mind, this was all just done by opening an attachment. It slipped by, whatever it was. I then like to be able to educate people and show them how easy. Even when I'm giving this to a client audience, I say, look, the bar is so darn low for hackers right now that if I go back and interact with that malware, I can actually say, hey, we've all heard of keystroke loggers, but how do you run one? Look at this. You just type in tab and hit start, and now all of a sudden I have a keystroke logger running. But I'm a show me, not tell me type of guy once again, so let's show them. So here we go. Let's zoom this page a little bit. Somebody shout me a username. Come on, I need one. Oh, come on. All right, a fake username. What'd I hear? Mom? I'm going to go with M-O-M? Oh, Bob. I'm going to go with Mom's Bob. That's just something that clearly I didn't set up. All right, password. Every time I ask for a password, somebody gives me password 1, so please, let's give me something else. What was it? QWERTY? QWERTY? We're just going to go Q-W-E-R-T-Y. Let's add an exclamation mark because we're extra secure, right? And if we take a look real quick with the key scan, there's just a command here that copy and paste or type it like I did. And now you can show your audience, Mom's Bob, and they've probably never even thought that this attacker not only can see you're on Chrome, they can see that it's QuickBooks that you're on, and only when then maybe do they actually make their tools automatically start keystroke logging. Now you put your audience at a place where they're like, oh, I cannot believe what is going on here. And then they never even thought about things like, oh, you're very elegant, so you were hitting tab to go between those fields, or holding shift to do QWERTY. You can actually see these, right? That's fun when somebody gets to see behind the screen. Nobody likes being the victim, right? Going back, like, look at that. Jen's here crying, yet we're laughing at poor Jen because this is enjoying to watch. So I tend to like really try to creep it out. Like every laptop webcam, is available, the microphone, and even these hacking tools actually have a help. Like they're that friendly. So like when I want to be a creep and I want to record your microphone, just use the record mic, or if I want to actually get this, let's see if the demo gods curse me here. Webcam List. Oh, why not? We are creepers, of course. I mean, that's how we got into IT in the first place. So if we take a look, what is that? Webcam Snap. Ooh, I stream. I'm a real big fan of like live streaming. So why not? One command here, I didn't have to write any software, no payloads, yet if you take a look, I'm facing with my external webcam. We can see our whole audience. So that's always at the point where usually there's somebody who gets up and they're like, oh gosh. Every single conference I've given out, the MSP handed me one of those microphone webcam covers, and I threw it in the trash right away, and now I'm going to put it on every one of my laptops because all of a sudden you've just educated them that this is real. And what's crazy is some of these free hacker tools even have modules depending on the webcam. This one has a lovely blue color, but sometimes your laptop has that little LED to shut the LED off because it's just software controlled. So some folks are like, oh, I would know somebody's in my stuff, but the reality is no. So going back, right, I'm a little limited in time, and I want to kind of hit some points home real quick with some of this demonstration. None of this is rocket science, right? It's not even data science. It's following a script. And so my goal is I always try to leave, now that we're all kind of creeped and we're like, gosh, I don't see a webcam cover on that one or this one. You're like, gosh, is Huntress giving out webcam cover? No, we're not. But I try to paint with them that even after maybe it took me weeks to actually get to this point, right? And keep in mind, I had no admin rights to do any of this, but maybe my actual goal was to get into the financing system, and it took me weeks to get to there. You need to bring it back to home that only when they're done, oftentimes people say like, oh, they're installing ransomware. We're starting to see a massive trend at Huntress where there's still people smashing and grabbing data with ransomware, but ransomware more and more is becoming, especially like in the Baltimore incident that's been getting all kinds of headlines, ransomware is used as a cover-up at the end. And so next time you're getting a notice from one of your vendors of like, oh, ransomware hit our servers, but we only saw ransomware and there was no exfiltration, we're seeing more and more that that's used for a cover-up, and there's no proof. So Baltimore said, we're not paying the ransom, and I'm from Baltimore. And the hacker was like, that's cool, because we're dumping your data on Twitter. And now there's talks again about paying ransom. It's funny how that happens. So I tend to like to end my demonstrations with a little bit more copy and paste. And so everybody can probably see where this is going. Upload ransomware, yes please, right? Let's minimize. I put it right on the desktop. And the last piece of this is obviously running your ransomware. Copy and paste once again, running, and then right here, we know this screen. We've all seen, please send Bitcoin here. But at this point, we've captivated our audience. We know that they're excited, and they think that we are the greatest security, experts that have ever been seen. But the reality is we're aware of it, but they didn't realize beforehand that they needed to depend on you for expertise. So I'll kind of hit this home with maybe just one last kind of Kyle's tips. I'm doing pretty good. I'm at 5 minutes, so maybe we even have a little bit of time for like 1 or 2 Q&A. If you give me 1 second, I'm just going to screen share here. You guys are going to see all my shady stuff on my desktop. Going back to hacking time, I always end it for our partners. They need to know their takeaways, right? It's just like call to actions and things like that. And most of the time, they don't realize that the threat landscape has changed just since I founded Huntress in 2016 or 2015 at the end of it. The threat landscape, almost all malware techniques used in that time have hardly changed, yet attackers are way more efficient, just a lot of optimization. There's been some pivots, but what happens is the customers don't know that. They also are not used to being told that perfect prevention is false. Like I always joke that I would have called my company Preventress or something terrible like that if I actually thought I could stop somebody. So they need to be educated that it's not an if, it is a when. But the reality is maybe it's when, they just need to accept that risk. So sometimes like knowing thyself, they've never thought that maybe you're okay with Jen and HR. Let's be real. If you went and actually prevented her from opening up email, her job is to open up resumes. She has to open these. I even hear about some companies going to the extreme. I hear every now and then of like so-and-so got fired for failing the phishing test. And I'm like, gosh, that's your first line of defense. Really, maybe part of it is you just allow HR to get compromised. My Fortune 500 partners spending $2 million a year on security, they can have perfect security or closer to it. Not a single person in this audience is spending $2 million on budget or anywhere close to it. So let's be real. These small businesses that maybe never get to become large accountants or large doctors, large dentists, construction, whatever crazy, maybe it's a dry cleaner. I don't know. But at the end of the day, they need to be able to tolerate and figure out what risk, right? As a dry cleaner, maybe my POS machine going down is the most critical thing to me. They need to be able to understand that. And without a partner like you to be able to help them get that, they're not going to know it. So identifying those critical layers and understanding how to layer security to find those, that's after you give a demonstration like this, that's how you electrify the room and get them to realize that you are that person that's going to help them mitigate gaps with your experience, not theirs. Even the IT department, as much as you guys know the customer I'm talking about, the single IT guy who knows all the experience that goes to Google just as good as you do, but wants to control everything, this is how you humble that person without offending that person. So my takeaways here are selling via education really works. I actually go, and one time I dreamt of I could go every day on the road and help my MSP partners do this demonstration for them. And then I realized, like, I've got kids, I've got life, like that doesn't scale, right? And nobody wants to pay Kevin, $50,000 or $100,000 to do a 2-minute or 20-minute presentation. So why don't we commoditize this presentation and use this for sales, especially with showing being so much more important than telling, right? I sell security not based on IT. And I think a lot of us probably were once doing IT somewhere and we decided to create our own companies because we could do it better than our boss. But we need to take a step back and realize IT sales and IT marketing is not about the IT. It's about enabling productivity and it's about making it an ops problem. When you step back and say, we're going to talk about your risk rather than you putting your head in the sand, ABA company, I don't know if they're going to buy. I asked them to give me feedback, but in the room, in the follow-up after that, they came over and they were like, well, that got our attention. I think we need to set up a meeting with our MSP partner. And I was like, yeah, I think you do. But these were folks that they tried to get for 2 years, and it took a little peek behind the curtain of what does it look like for an attacker to make this relatable. Right? I'm here to help you grow. I could have clearly bored you all to death with tons of slides. I don't want that. I go to conferences too. I live at like Black Hat and DEF CON and things like that. And the last thing I want to see is somebody's like garbage buy my widget. So I'm here to help you and I'm going to continue doing this. Maybe you never get to the point where you're actually doing these slides. Part of my goal is I'm even like doing some screen capture here now, but I want to get this to the point that even if the best we can give, maybe it's a video of my ugly mug helping you sell. That's kind of what I'm trying to work through over the next couple quarters. And my last piece here is Huntress. Right? It's a mandatory call to action. We help 400 MSPs do our thing. If you guys are really interested and want to talk, you can talk to me at the booth. So that's all I got, and I'm at 48 seconds. So thank you so much.